Hi, this is Steve back at the Listening Post, and I'm here today to talk about one of my favorite bands from the 60s, Canned Heat, the band that put the boogie in the blues. Canned Heat was formed in 1965 in Los Angeles by two record collectors, Bob Hite and Alan Wilson. Bob Hite grew up in Torrance near LA and got a job managing a record store. And he met Alan Wilson through another blues musician, John Fahey, who Alan Wilson was working with at the time. The name Canned Heat is interesting. It comes from a 1928 recording by a blues musician named Tommy Johnson called the Canned Heat Blues. It's a song about getting high by drinking a combination of soda water and Sterno. The group started gigging in 1965. They played a very traditional acoustic style of blues that didn't catch on with the audiences at the time. They broke up and brought in Henry Vestine on lead guitar and started gigging again in 1966, and things clicked with the audience. They got a job working at the Topanga Corral in the Santa Monica Mountains, and then in 1967 they became the house band at a club called the Kaleidoscope on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood. In March of 1967, they were offered a record contract with Liberty Records, and at that point they brought in a new bass player, Larry Taylor, who happened to be the drummer, the brother of the Ventures drummer, Mark Taylor. Larry had actually already worked with Jerry Lee Lewis and had performed on the first Monkees album. He's playing bass on the Last Train to Clarksville and I'm Not Your Stepping Stone. In April of '67, they went into the studio and recorded a series of demos, and the producer was R&B legend Johnny Otis. These demos are available now on an album called Vintage Heat, which is worth checking out. There's also an anthology called Uncanned, and that's got a few more demos, including an extended version of On the Road Again. They released their first album, which I have right here, in June of 1967, and it came out 3 weeks after their appearance at the Monterey Pop Festival, which was captured on film, if you're interested in seeing how they looked about that time. Yeah, this album's got some great songs on it. Bullfrog Blues, one of my favorites, covered by a song by William Harris. Rolling and Tumbling, which they performed on camera at the Monterey Pop Festival. Dust My Broom, a Robert Johnson song that Elmore James had a big hit with. And the end of 1967, they brought in a new drummer, Adolfo Fito de la Parra from Mexico, and this basically solidified the classic 60s lineup for the band. Now, Canned Heat is kind of a tragic story. On their very first tour, they were busted in Denver for drug possession. To make bail, they had to receive a $10,000 advance from Liberty Records, and they did this in exchange for their publishing rights. This setback was going to haunt them for the rest of their career. They were always suffering from financial hardships, and they would eventually have problems with drug abuse. Their second album's called Boogie with Canned Heat. That came out in January 1968. That had their first big hit on it, On the Road Again, which interestingly was sung by Alan Wilson. Alan Wilson played the harp, and he played kind of a Delta slide guitar, little piano, but he wasn't the lead singer. Bob Hite was the lead singer. But that's Alan Wilson, On the Road Again, and it's a really neat song. It's got a kind of a droning sitar in the background that really gives it a characteristic sound. It's also got a couple other songs. It's got a 11-minute boogie called the Fried Hockey Boogie, and that's based on a real standard kind of a blues rhythm John Lee Hooker used in Boogie Chillin' and Slim Harpo used in a song called Shake Your Hips. And more contemporary listeners might recognize it. ZZ Top used it to introduce their song LaGrange. Their next album's called Living the Blues, came out in October 1968. That was a double album, the second LP being one song. a live version of a song called Refried Boogie, the first time in the history of rock music that a single song covered both sides of an LP. And it also contained another Alan Wilson hit, Going Up the Country, based on a 1928 Henry Thomas tune called Going Down South. That reached number 11 on the U.S. charts. 69, they came out with an album called Hallelujah. Did not have any big hits on it. In the summer of 69, Henry Vestine was dropped from the group because of his drug issues, and he was temporarily replaced by Mike Bloomfield, and then Harvey Mandel was chosen as his permanent replacement. Harvey Mandel already had a solo album under his belt, and he had recorded with Barry Goldberg and Charlie Musselwhite. Harvey Mandel performed with the band at Woodstock, and if you buy the 25th anniversary video, you'll see the band. They had a couple songs included in the film when it first came out. Going Up the Country was on the film, but they weren't seen on video. But you can see them if you pick up the 25th anniversary. Harvey Mandel went on tour with the band in Europe in 1970, and there is a video out of the band from a German television program called Beat Club that you can pick up on DVD. In August of 1970, they released their fifth studio album called Future Blues. I have that right here. And this featured another hit called Let's Work Together, a Wilbert Harrison song that Bob Hite did sing the lead vocals on. The album cover was very controversial. The band is posing in the way the U.S. Marines posed when they raised the flag at Iwo Jima, but they've got the American flag upside down, which is a universal sign of distress. It turns out that Alan Wilson was a environmentalist, and he was really upset at the time with air pollution and other environmental issues, and so that was the message they were trying to convey with this album cover. Unfortunately, this was Alan Wilson's last album. He died in September of 1970 of a drug overdose. The band released two albums in 1971. One was a collaboration with John Lee Hooker called Hooker and Heat, and that has the last recordings that Alan Wilson made with the group. And then they released another interesting album called Live at the Topanga Corral. The recordings weren't from the Topanga Corral, though. They were from the Kaleidoscope. And the deal was the record company at the time didn't want to issue a live album. So their manager, Skip Taylor, said, well, these were recorded in 1966 before we were under contract. Live at the Topanga Corral, the recording quality is not real great, but there are some really nice performances. They do a cover of B.B. King's Sweet Little 16 that just captures the chemistry between Alan Wilson playing his Delta slide rhythms and Henry Vestine's fuzzed out lead. I mean, that was what the band was all about. And then they also have a live version of Bullfrog Blues that the band is just red hot on. They came out with another album, 1971. Joel Scott Hill, who later joined the Flying Burrito Brothers, replaced Alan Wilson on that album. And they did a duet with Little Richard called Rocking with the King. Henry Vestine returned on lead guitar. And this lineup also is on a live album called Live at the Turku Rock Festival from Finland. You can check out if you're interested. 73, they had another guitarist, James Shane, on an album called The New Age, and that had a song by James called The Harley Davidson Blues, which was very popular with the bikers. And interestingly, if any of you know who Lester Bangs is, he was a journalist for Rolling Stone and Cream magazine. He was fired from Rolling Stone for writing a disrespectful review of the New Age album. Anybody interested in Lester Bangs, there's a film out called Almost Famous, and he's played in that film by Philip Seymour Hoffman. That's worth checking out. Bob Hite's last album with the band was in 1978, Human Condition. He died in 1981. He collapsed from a drug overdose right in the middle of a show in Los Angeles, and was found dead afterwards. There is an album just before he passed away called Boogie Assault, and that has Walter Trout on guitar, who's gone on to have a fine career in blues. And that was from their 1981 Australian tour. So that's the last album with Bob Hite on it. Henry Vestine passed away in 1997 at the end of a European tour. The good news is the band is still together. The drummer, Fido de la Parra, has been the constant throughout their history ever since joining, and he's still out there touring. And in 2010, Larry Taylor and Harvey Mandel rejoined the group. I just went to their website recently, and I see they're coming back to California later this year, so I'm definitely looking forward to checking that out. Anyway, that's some information on Canned Heat, a band that I think is well worth checking out, and I want to thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.